Hush is directed by Mike Flanagan and is a psychological horror thriller and is only available on Netflix. There's no cinema release for this film, but it's available on Netflix now, and you should go watch it because it's free, as long as you have a Netflix account. So Hush is essentially a home invasion film. There's a woman who lives by herself in a house, she's a writer, and there's a psychopath killer who's trying to get into her house to kill her. The catch is, the main character, the woman in question, is deaf and mute. She can't hear and she can't speak. There's an older film with a similar concept to this, I forget the title, but I know it stars Audrey Hepburn, and it's kind of the same thing except she's blind instead of deaf and mute. And in that film they utilise the character being blind in an effective way to tell the story, and the same is done here. The fact that the main character is deaf and mute, is used really effectively in sort of twisting this story. So the killer is after the woman, our main character, but when he finds out that she is deaf and mute, then he decides he's not going to kill her straight away. He's going to mess with her a bit and scare her. So I'll just say right away, this is a really good thriller. It's a really good horror film, good thriller, and I really enjoyed this film. With me in horror films, I do really like horror films, but then there's so many awful ones that come out every year, and I just don't go bother seeing them because, I can't be bothered sitting through really rubbish horror films. But every now and then there's one or two a year that are really good, and I think this is one of those that comes out this year. It's a real shame that it didn't come out in cinemas because the film's definitely good enough to be out in cinemas. But then again, I suppose I appreciate that it comes out on Netflix straight away and I could watch it so easily, and everyone else can watch it really easily as well. I think the best thing about this film is the main character, Maddie, played by Kate Siegel. She does so much good acting without saying a word. She plays her very well. All her acting's visual with facial expressions, actions, and she does it really, really well. But the best thing with her character is that she's actually smart and shows it. There are countless. The number of dumb characters that are in horror films, I think, is impossible to count. There's so many instances in horror films where you're just saying to yourself, no human being would do that. You guys know what I'm talking about, the characters oh, I'm so scared so I'll freeze and stand here and do nothing and wait to die. There's all sorts of things like that. Why would you go in that cupboard? Why would you do this? It's infuriating. Pretty much everything Maddie does in this film makes sense, and she is bloody doing her best to stay alive, and she manages to stay on top of things fairly often. She's always struggling to get there, but she's bloody fighting for her life, and it shows. And Mike Flanagan's direction really shows her thought process, things that are going through her head and how she's going to survive the situation. It's all done really, really well. I'd say this film's closer to a thriller than a horror, but the horror aspects of this film work really well. To my memory, there are absolutely zero obnoxious, cheap jump scares in this film, which I love. I cannot stand jump scares. It's the worst thing. They require no effort, and I hate them in horror films, and there are none to be found in this film. The acting is really good from everyone. It's a small cast. There's only I think 3, maybe 4 characters. No one's really outstanding except for the main character, I'd say. But everyone's acting works well for the type of film that this is. The suspense and attention in this film is excellent. To me, this is always the best aspect of any horror thriller film, and it's pinpoint in this film. It's done so well. I was genuinely caring about what happened to Maddie. If she was going to survive the situation, how she was going to survive the situation. Really gripping stuff in this film. If I was to find any problems with this film, I'd say that the killer, I did like him, but he wasn't a great villain or anything. He didn't really have any motivations or anything like that. But then I don't think he was ever intended to be that way. I think he was only intended to be that, psychopath that's just a force of chaos and wants to kill people, etc. So I don't really see a problem with that. Other than that, I don't really have many problems with this film at all. A few horror cliches that, happen in other horror films, I don't know, the tapping on the window, things like that. At the end of the day, it is a horror film, and the horror cliches are there when they need to be. But otherwise, it's a really well made horror film. I really enjoyed it. I think you guys will enjoy it. I'm going to give this film a 9 out of 10. That might seem really high. I just want to make it clear, this isn't a groundbreaking horror film or anything. This isn't going to change horror forever. However, for what it is, a claustrophobic horror thriller, it does that very, very well. and in my opinion as best as it could have done. So that's why the film is marked as highly as it is. So I'd highly advise seeing Hush. It's on Netflix, you can see it whenever you want. Thanks very much for watching my review, and see you later.